What up? How's everybody doing? Welcome to Three Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. Today, we're going to talk about Hollywood one more time. I talked about Hollywood extensively in the Seth Rollins video I did. Some people wanted me to continue along those lines, and let's continue since we're on the subject of how much Hollywood hates you. So I watched the movie Sound of Freedom. I had to see for myself what the big deal was. I'm not that familiar with the guy that the movie is about. I watched parts of his interview with Jordan Peterson, heard him answer some questions. I did. I don't really get what the big deal is. Having watched the movie myself, The Sound of Freedom, I can tell you it's a very straightforward movie. It doesn't have much in the way of uh, of political dichotomy. People don't talk that much about the politics of the movie because the movie doesn't really have politics. It's basically good guy versus bad guys, and that's it. There's not much in the entirety of the movie to get that upset about. So I watched the movie and I realized that there are some things that people would be upset about, but it wouldn't be anything overt that they would be upset about. It's not like you would think from the way people talked about the movie that it was one of these movies that says that, all pedophiles are Democrats or all pedophiles are, trans individuals or gays or something like that. No such messaging in the movie. It's essentially that pedophiles are bad. They're bad people, and they're not even specifically viewed as being evil. They're evil in what their actions are, but they're not portrayed as now I got you, child. It's not. They're not even cartoonishly evil. They're basically, again, I guess it's the scariest part of it. Is they're very banal. You know, it's kind of like business for them. It's what they do. They kidnap children and they trade them for sex. I mean for money. So it's sort of a straightforward movie. There's no real politics to it. So I was wondering what the hell everybody was so upset about. So, as most of you know, some of you have an idea. This movie was uh, lambasted as being some sort of QAnon adjacent movie. And QAnon, according to Wikipedia, is the core QAnon conspiracy theory is that a cabal of satanic cannibalistic child molesters are operating a global child sex trafficking ring which conspired against the former U.S. President Donald Trump during his term in office. Um, I don't know about that second part. Now, the first part, yes, there's a lot of people who buy into the QAnon conspiracy theory that there's a cabal of satanic cannibalistic child molesters and a global child sex trafficking ring. That part I can buy. There are a lot of people who believe that. The fact that these people may have colluded against Trump is like, well, does that part really need to be there? Um, it seemed to me it's 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 odd that that would be the go-to, is that it conspired against Trump. They don't necessarily have to conspire against Trump. They've called every Republican for the last 60 years a racist. Since Nixon, well, since Goldwater, they've called pretty much every Republican a racist. You know, so we're gonna talk about this movie. We're not gonna talk too much about Tim Ballard because I don't know that much about him outside of the movie. And then, for starters, it's a movie. It's not a documentary. The guy's not saying this is a blow by blow video of things that he did. It's a movie about his life that's clearly going to be uh, modified for the medium. So it's a movie, and that's that. So I watched this, and I watched Transformers Beast Wars. Um, I don't know why I watched Transformers. I just saw it on the thing and clicked it. So wasted 2 hours. But you know, this Hollywood thing, it's it's weird because I spent quite a bit of time looking at the idea of a QAnon conspiracy and say to myself, like, these people are just playing in your face. Like, I went to Wikipedia and read you what they say about a QAnon conspiracy. Pretty much everything that they listed here, besides the whole conspiring against Donald Trump thing, which is pretty nebulous, and you can't really trust the leftist media when they're telling you what something is. But pretty much everything listed, you can prove in one way or the other. You know, it was it was bizarre. Like WG Field kind of nailed it. There is no conspiracy when they're talking about the Catholic Church. There's no conspiracy theory. When they were talking about Rush Limbaugh going to the Dominican Republic to go on sex trips or whatever, and calling them a sex tourist, there was nobody called that a conspiracy theory. It was a fact, right? It's not a fact when they want to do movies and TV shows about sex cults and rape culture and all that stuff is real when they want to do it. When they want to tell the story and there's somebody they can demonize, it's real. When it's somebody you're talking about, it's not real. That's very, very interesting, right? Um, even when you catch them in the act, it's not real. It's again just playing in your face, you know. And so I went and I looked up a lot of these claims, and I'm not going to be able to touch on all of them. I'm one guy with a tablet. I can't do everything, you know. Rape culture is a conspiracy theory, you know. Structural racism is a conspiracy theory. If you believe that people who don't know each other are conspiring against you, that's a conspiracy theory based on your skin color or your gender or whatever. It's a conspiracy theory, but that's a conspiracy theory that is okay to believe because they believe it. And then they will basically continuously throw that stuff in your face. And anything is an example of structural racism or structural gender discrimination or whatever the hell, right? But if you start talking about sex trafficking, specifically sex trafficking involving children, no matter how many Epsteins you arrest, they'll say it's not real. Like you start talking about sex cults, no matter how many times you talk about Nexium, they'll claim it's not real. There's no sex cults. Nobody does blood rituals except for when Megan Fox came out and talked about how she does blood rituals with her husband. Oh my God, it's not real. You are all making it up. It's the ultimate gaslighting. You know, they've been doing this stuff for years. So we're gonna talk about this movie real quick because it's not that much. It's not that much it's not even about whether Rush Limbaugh is a good guy or not. I'm pretty neutral on Democrats and Republicans. I think they both have the same capacity for evil, same capacity to be corrupt, same capacity to be incompetent, same capacity for everything. So it doesn't matter to me whether Rush Limbaugh used to traffic children or not. I just find it funny that we're not supposed to talk about it unless we're talking about somebody on the right, which is very bizarre. Or people get arrested and they get very little time. The TOD. Sometimes people get arrested, they don't get that much time. Or they get arrested and then they turn state's evidence and then they claim, I was just a victim too. That's like half of the Nexium thing, right? All these people who recruited other people into that group, and then they'd be like, wait a minute, I'm a victim too. Then you get to do interviews talking about how you were tricked. and everything. And it's like, okay, stop it. All right, so let's talk about Sound of Freedom real quick. And so the movie is pretty straightforward. The film starts with a young girl, and she's a Mexican child, and she runs into a woman on the street. The woman on the street takes her back to her home. They meet her father. This woman is posing as a talent agent, saying that she has like all these abilities and stuff like this, and she's going to be a really good singer or a model or something to that effect. The girl's brother comes into the house too. The woman sits with the father. They talk about the kids and all the kids' talents or whatever, and the father takes them to a apartment that is supposedly a talent agency. The woman tells the father he can't come in, but give them a few minutes and he can come back and pick his children up. So they go inside the building. There's other children there. They do a little movie magic. The man comes back, knocks on the door. Nobody answers the door. He pounds on the door, beats on the door. Nobody answers the door. He kicks the door in. The apartment is completely empty. So from there, we move to basically Tim Ballard is part of this government agency that is now searching for the missing children. So he ends up finding the little boy. He had been missing for like 3 months or something like that, been sex trafficked, and the girl was still missing. So he reunites the boy with his father. The girl is still missing. They track it to Colombia. We started getting into some procedural stuff where his boss is saying we can't do anything because it's outside of our realm of what we can do. We can't send you. Ballard stands up for what's right and says, I gotta go. I gotta do this. So the boss is like, okay, you can go, but you better find me some evidence. So he goes to Colombia. It's taking too long. The boss says, I'm pulling the plug on this thing. We're not supposed to be in Colombia anyway. Tim Ballard decides to go black, meaning he's going to do it on his own. This is after a conversation that he has with one of the other guys that's working against sex trafficking down in Colombia, where the guy says, this is the reason why I went black, because, the states, they have, a certain sphere of influence. And once you go outside of that, these things don't matter anymore. So Ballard essentially quits his job, starts up his own agency, starts recruiting people, and starts searching Colombia for this girl. He infiltrates the pedophile ring, busts a bunch of pedophiles, I think 54 children they claim to have found. He continues searching for the girl because even though he found all of these children, he never found the actual girl he was looking for. So at the end of the movie, he actually finds the girl. She's been branded, so he knows it's her. And he finds her. This is the first and only time he fights and pretty much assumedly kills anybody in the movie. So it's not like Taken where he's, karate fighting everybody. It's essentially this guy who is trying to sneak all these children out. But in this particular situation, this girl's about to get molested. So he actually fights the molester and beats him up and chokes him out. And he smuggles the girl out of the country, reunites her with her father. The end. Right? That's literally the movie. That's literally it. There's nothing special about it. No kung fu, no gunfights, no political garbage. There was a lot of heavy messaging on sex trafficking. That was about it, though. A lot of statistics being thrown at you when Ballard talks about how many children go missing and all this sort of stuff. That's probably the most annoying thing about it. But if you watch the movie, or if you have seen it so far, you'll know one of the biggest reasons why these leftists don't like the movie. There's two reasons, well, three. One is Tim Ballard is positioned in this movie to be a man of God, and his calling was to go help these children. And he was not going to let the government's incompetence or the government's procedures, their sphere of influence, stop him from doing what he felt was the right thing to do. He was following what he felt was the call of God. So as evidence of that, what you get is a conversation he's having with the guy when he's getting ready to quote unquote go black, where the guy tells him, when God tells you what to do, you cannot hesitate. And this is what leads Tim Ballard to quit his job and to go searching for the missing child on his own by himself. Later in the movie, Tim Ballard tells one of the guys he's trying to recruit, you can sell a bag of Coke one time. You can sell a child as young as 5 multiple times a day. So you're getting this, again, this really, really heavy messaging about pedophilia and child molestation. Later in the movie, one of the songs they sing in this little village or whatever he finds the girl in is God's children are not for sale. So you see there's a lot of heavy Christian themes, which is why there's not a lot of cursing. There's not a lot of violence. It's basically one good man on a mission to save children. That's literally it. There's not a lot of violence in the movie. There's no sex in the movie. It's a very Christian movie. So that's why it appeals to so many Midwesterners and various Republican types, because it's a movie that they can get behind. The bad guys are clearly bad. There's nothing ambiguous about it. There's no, well, you misunderstand them. No, they're pedophiles. There's nothing you can do. Never trust a pedophile, which is one of the lines in the movie. I've seen people start putting it on T-shirts. There's nothing in it that is so over the top that it needs to be, it needs to offend people the way it does. So as people are talking about it, about the conspiracy theory element of it, the first thing I said after watching it is, what's the difference between this and an episode of Law and Order SVU? Because Law and Order SVU claims to be ripped from the headlines, right? But Law and Order SVU have done episodes that end up being hoaxes, things that were not real at all, things that were so cartoonishly twisted to make one side look evil. I mean, they literally did a Gamergate episode that involved somebody being raped and saying, what, go home, gamer girl, or something to that effect. Like, Gamergate was not about rape at all. How did we get here? Who was raped during Gamergate? So when I read the Rolling Stone article about this movie too, and as I was reading through it, they kept talking about how this Tim Ballard guy isn't the real deal. He embellishes, he does this, he does that. And I'm saying, like, he made a movie. What's the difference between this and an episode of Law and Order SVU? You know, what's the difference? So Mariska Hargitay gets to come up with all her conspiracy theories about, you know, college dorms full of rapists, but this guy can't talk about global pedophile rings. He didn't even talk about like an individual president or senator or man of repute. All the pedophiles are essentially nameless, faceless, could have been anybody. They look creepy, but that's about it. It wasn't meant to be anybody that you would know. You know, it wasn't like a satire of anybody or anything. But Law and Order SVU have done episodes about stuff that ends up being 100% fake. Phony. Complete bullshit. Why is it that we can talk? It's fine when Law and Order SVU puts out conspiracy theories about rape culture, but not when, like, even if he was a crazy Christian right winger. It's like, so what? It's one movie that demonizes sex trafficking and is not political in any way. Why does it matter if he's not the great savior of white people? I'm sorry, great savior of children. I had something else on my mind because we're going to talk about that. Why does it matter? It's a movie. He's a guy who made a movie. You know, I remember when a couple of weeks ago, and I still may do this. I may do this like next week. Frank Dukes. How many of you people know who Frank Dukes is? The guy that Bloodsport was. The guy who was the inspiration for Bloodsport. He ended up being a complete and total phony, right? Nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit that Bloodsport is not based on reality. Nobody cares. You know, it's a movie, right? Now, sure, they may say it's based on a true story to a degree, but most things that are based on a true story, there's going to be some embellishments to it because they have to have a a entertainment factor to it, you know? So I was dumbfounded after watching the movie. Like, I understand how you could not like it. It's a painfully sort of mundane film. It's not anything incredible, but it does heavily criticize pedophile rings. Interestingly enough, and I noticed this right at the beginning of the movie, how they used a female to lure the children, which I smiled at because that's very true. That they often do use women as the faces of these rings and stuff like this. And that's one of the first things that I learned. Well, first things you would learn if you actually look up a lot of sex trafficking, a lot of cults or whatever, how oftentimes the women are used to recruit people, you know? So the woman, and then in this movie, like, as soon as they get busted, the woman's like, I'm a victim, I'm a victim. It was, which made me laugh because I was like, that's a typical woman, right? She was involved with this whole thing from the very beginning. As soon as she get busted, it's all of a sudden, I was a victim too. Oh no. And whatever. So again, I didn't see anything about the movie that would lead people to believe that it's anything other than people who dislike pedophilia talking about how much they dislike pedophilia. You know, I don't know if she got out, but she was definitely a part of the sex cult, and she definitely recruited people. Funny how that works. So the Rolling Stone article was entitled "Sound of Freedom is a superhero movie for dads with brainworms." The QAnon-tinged thriller about sex trafficking is designed to appeal to the conscience of a conspiracy-addled boomer. Again, conspiracy-addled boomer. The one thing about the left, I can tell you this: they have no problem accusing you of being what they are. Again, we've talked about structural racism, structural gender discrimination, structural sexual discrimination, all these other structures of things that you literally can't see, but it's clearly there because they don't get the outcomes that they want. And that's not a conspiracy theory, even though it clearly is. You can bust pedophile rings, and then they'll still say pedophile rings aren't real. What? How can it be? How can you have both? How can we have pedophiles on television? People like R. Kelly, people like Kevin Spacey. You know, now let me take it back because I don't know if Kevin Spacey's a pedophile. Let me take that back. So you have people, but Kevin Spacey was involved with some sex stuff. That's what he's on trial for right now. I think they're still waiting for the verdict. But this stuff still exists. And you're sitting here saying to yourself, what's going on? You know? Why is it that I turn on my TV and I'm constantly hearing about Epstein and Weinstein and Larry Nassar and what's going on in Penn State and what's going on in Michigan State, Penn State, several other colleges, all sorts of things. Like, how many of Oprah's friends have been busted in, like, different rings and things like this? And we're told that it's not real. That's what I mean by Hollywood hates you. They don't respect your intelligence. They're and what I mean by Hollywood, I don't just mean the actors. I want people to know this. It's not just the actors. It's the actors. It's the producers. It's the journalists in the medium. Like, you think Rolling Stone likes you? Would they write this? They could have just wrote, Sound of Freedom is a terrible movie. Don't go see it. But it has to be a superhero movie for dads with brainworms. What do you mean? I can tell you this. There have been other movies about this very same subject that had more action in it and that told better stories. There was a Denzel Washington movie called Man on Fire. Remember that movie? And it was about a young girl getting kidnapped in Mexico, and Denzel Washington was her bodyguard. And once she got kidnapped, he kind of, went on a mission to find her. You know, Man on Fire was great. Of course, everybody knows Taken. Those two movies are both about, young women being kidnapped and sold into sex trafficking or slavery or whatever. One of them is even set in Mexico. Neither one of those are movies, superhero movies for dads with brainworms, though. How can that how can that be? So what is it about this particular movie that is for starters not even really a superhero movie because the guy's not doing that much action. He's driven by a calling, you know? That much is true. He is called to go and do stuff, but he's not going out here kung fu kicking people in the face and everything. That's not in this movie. So let's go through this article a little bit. It's a lot of personal attacks on the actor, on Tim Ballard himself, and not a lot about the movie. So here's what they wrote about the movie. Sound of Freedom lives up to that anticipation. It's a stomach-turning experience fetishizing the torture of its child victims and lingering over lush preludes to their sexual abuse. At times, I had the uncomfortable sense that I might be arrested myself just for sitting through it. Nonetheless, the mostly white-haired audience around me could be relied on to gasp, moan in pity, mutter condemnations, applaud, and bellow amen at moments of righteous fury, as when Ballard declares that, quote, God's children are not for sale. They were entranced by what they clearly took for a searing expose. Not even the occasional nasty coughing fit, and we had no shortage of those, could break the spell. Notice he's talking about not the movie, but the people watching the movie. That they're all old and sick and Christian. And they're shouting at the movie, amen. And this somehow offends him. The guy who decides to put that in the article and it's supposed to be a movie review. Who cares about the audience you went to go see it with? Does that make the movie better or worse? But it needs to be said that he's condemning these people. He's saying they're taking it as an expose. Is he in their head? Now he's mind reading. Oh, I know what they're thinking. You think these adults have never seen a movie before? They've never seen a movie before, apparently. They saw Batman and thought it was real. No. It's a movie. And they know it's a movie, but they agree with the message of the movie. So he continues, at the outset, we're introduced to Cavazio as Ballard, working for the Department of Homeland Security, blah, 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 crimes against children. He says, eventually he'll abandon DHS altogether, a rogue crusader fed up with the bureaucratic limitations to infiltrate and bring down the Colombian operation. Apart from its relentless messaging, the movie is hobbled by a near total absence of procedural logic. That original rescue is only possible because Ballard is standing at the exact spot of a U.S.-Mexico border station at the very moment that his target tries to cross. Lucky! Earlier, Ballard convinces an imprisoned child porn peddler faces a sentence of 30 years to help him contact traffickers in exchange for an immunity deal, needlessly posing as a pedophile himself to gain trust. When the guy fulfills his end of the bargain, Ballard has a dozen police officers swarm the diner they're in to arrest him again? Wait, how was he sprung from custody in the first place? Doesn't matter as long as the drooling creep with requisite glasses and pervert mustache gets his head slammed against a table once more. The same muddled approach is taken to Ballard's later, more sensational busts, which is certainly in keeping with the way OUR embellishes and misrepresents their international missions, according to a Vice News investigation group. So these people apparently have never seen people released from prison in order to turn state's evidence. Because they've done it with drug dealers. They've done it with militiamen. They've done it with the KKK. Why wouldn't they do it with pedophiles? It's a regular part of procedure that if you catch a fish, you get what you can out of him, and then you release him. Like there's literally a book called Kill or Capture by Matthew Alexander. It's about terrorists. And when they was in, I think it was Iraq or Afghanistan, I forget which one, they used to capture these guys, and the guys would flip if they could. If they knew anything, they would flip. And then they would release them on the hopes that the guy would go out, collect more information, and come back. Because you have to start all over again if you keep the guy in prison, right? If you lock the guy up for terrorism, KKK, whatever you're going to do, then that's the end. But if you release him under the guise or under the hope that he's going to continue to connect with these people, you might be able to catch more people. This is common sense. But what you're told by Rolling Stone is that this is a procedural disaster. We don't do this in reality. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. They do it. They do it with terrorists. They've done it with militiamen. There's articles written by people who infiltrated the KKK where the exact same thing happens. They pick up one guy for doing something crazy. They flip him, and then they put him back out there. And then he's wearing a wire all the time, or he's got to, talk to this particular agent and drop off a file or whatever the case may be. This is a classic espionage move. It is nothing, absolutely nothing out of the way about that. Yeah, Law and Order does this shit all the time. They literally do it all. There was an episode where I think it was Stabler caught, what was it, Big Boy from Outkast. He was in an episode where they were trafficking animals or something like that, which, is not a sex crime, but whatever. And they released him so he can go back to working for the guy, but Stabler was with him. So he was trying to get Stabler to infiltrate, and then Big Boy got ate by a tiger. So, but this kind of stuff happens in TV shows and movies and shit all the time. So this particular critique, it's not really a critique. It's not for real. It's not legit. He just got to have something to complain about. Something of substance that's actually about the movie to complain about. So now they released the pedophile, and then they used him to find other pedophiles. They would never do that. I'm like, what do you mean? That's literally all they do. It's literally all they do. They catch them and they use them to catch other people. Gun runners, drug dealers, all sorts of domestic and foreign terrorists. I mean, come on. WG Phil said they did this in the same season as the Gamergate episode, or a season or two out when Rollins had a baby. Do I know the name of the guy who wrote the article? His name is Miles Klee. Miles Klee, whoever that guy is. I'm going to skip to another part. As implausible as the movie is, it invents a finale where Ballard journeys deep into a jungle alone to pluck a girl from the clutches of guerrilla militants, which he accomplishes by posing as a doctor distributing cholera vaccines. One wonders if it was extreme enough for Cavielzi? How the fuck do you pronounce this guy's name? Anyway, the actor has taken to repeating the most grotesque falsehoods of the sprawling QAnon ideology. So how do we go from talking about the movie to talking about the actor? Are we talking about the movie or are we talking about the actor? Which one are we discussing here? Is this a critique of the actor or a critique of the movie? Or it's both, right? It's supposed to be an attack on the actor, but you put it in the same thing as the movie. So there's no real difference between the two. You just don't like the actors. Just say we don't like the actors. All right? So here's the crazy thing. The actor has taken to repeating the most grotesque falsehoods of the sprawling QAnon ideology. Among them, that traffickers are harvesting children's organs and extracting the chemical compound adrenochrome from their brains before murdering them. Is Cavell? Are we sure about that? Because it's Caviezel. I'm not supposed to pronounce every letter and vowel in this thing. So I'm just going to do Cavell because that's what the TOD tells me. He tells me it's Cavell. I assume he knows more about this guy than me. So he says, compared to this nonsense, Sound of Fury is relatively grounded in our universe. But that mainstream accessibility makes it valuable as a recruitment tool, much as generic Save the Children campaigns prove gateways to far-right conspiracy theories about a secret cabal of evil elites conducting blood rituals. Again, we go from talking about the movie to talking about QAnon and people who have nothing to do with this movie. Who the fuck is QAnon anyway? Anyway, it says on the QAnon message board Great Awakening this week, adherents celebrated the movie's box office success. It says it quickly made back its modest budget of $14 million and out-earned the latest Indiana Jones sequel. Its premiere date after the franchise blockbuster has been out for several days, while crowning that demons, including the movie theater employees annoyed by the demographic it pulled, were miserable at their victory. Well, it sounds like you are miserable to me. It sounds like you are upset about the movie's success. Otherwise, you would just let the movie fly by. You wouldn't even care, right? Why would you spend so much time on something that you don't care about? I mean, if you are a big, important Hollywood writer, journalist, or whatever, why are you writing all these words and all this stuff about a movie you don't care about? So he continues. Let's find some part where he continues. He says, it matters too that Sound of Freedom almost never saw the light of day. Completed in 2018, no studio would take it for fear of losing money. According to producer Eduardo Verastegui, with Netflix and Amazon among those who passed, it finally found distribution thanks to Angel Studios, a Utah-based media company that crowdfunds its original films and TV series that, quote, amplify light. Although founded by Mormon brothers who originally created a content filtering service to prevent children from seeing violence, nudity, and profanity, it claims no formal church affiliation. So here's another reason why they don't like this movie. It was operated outside of their cabal, right? Apparently, this Cavell actor has been sort of blacklisted or blackballed from the industry. He's not a good guy. He's a QAnon conspiracy theorist. So it wasn't made with the okay of the Hollywood elites. They didn't like the movie, so they decided they were not going to pick it up. They weren't going to shelve it. They were going to shelve it. It was never supposed to come out. So if it was never supposed to come out, it was never supposed to see the light of day because Hollywood didn't want it out. They decided they didn't want it out. And then somebody else came along and decided we can make it. We could do it for ourselves. We could put it out there. Okay. So what? What's the big deal? Again, what's the difference between this and the episode of Law and Order SVU? So what? Some Mormons put it out. Why do we care about why Mormons put it out? I don't understand. Why do we care? But it seems to me that Hollywood, with its myriad of unions, writers and actors or whatever, they decide, the publishers and the producers and all them, they decide who gets to put this stuff out. They get to decide what this is exactly what I talked about in the thing when I was talking about Seth Rollins. How the communists have decided. They make the decisions in the writing room what to put in a movie and what not to put in there. And if you can get in the room and you can tell them we don't want anybody pushing any Christian messages, any anti-Democrat Party messages, any messages against the Hollywood elites, unless there are approved elites that we can attack, like, Harvey Weinstein or Jeffrey Epstein or somebody like that, we can attack them. But most other people, we can't attack them. We can attack, like, if this movie was about busting pedophile priests, they would be talking about how great it is. It should be talking about public school teachers, which, they really would have gotten their dander up. So it says, therefore, to its boosters, the movie checks many satisfying boxes at once. Cavell, a devout Catholic allegedly blacklisted by the entertainment industry, back for a mythology-burnishing biopic of Ballard, a call to action in an imagined global war against sexual predators, a blow struck at the heart of woke Hollywood, the den of iniquity that snubbed it, and least we forget, is thought to produce the wealthy deviants who serve as villains in this story. Sounds about right to me. So what, though? Do you think you're going to be broke and involved in a global sex trafficking ring? Most broke motherfuckers can't even pay for pussy on their own block. So, of course, if you're trying to get you a sweet Hispanic baby or a Korean child or something like that, you're going to need some money. Again, it was not a problem when they wanted to try to put all that crap on like Rush Limbaugh or something. But when you start talking about wealthy Hollywood elites, no, you can't do that. We won't let you do that. We won't let you do that. Even though we spent, how many millions of dollars chasing down goddamn Weinstein and Epstein and all these guys who were, treating young girls like dick rags or whatever. It was fine then, but you're not allowed to do it. But here's the part that really blew my mind off. No, matter of fact, let's back up. Let's continue talking about the movie. It says, it will surely do no good to point out Sound of Fury's hackneyed white savior narrative, or its wildly immature assumption that abused and traumatized children go right back to normal once the bad guys are in handcuffs, or that it enforces stereotypes about trafficking that Angel Studios itself says are less than accurate. To the film's intended viewers, these cannot be flaws, they're the whole appeal. Let's take these spot by spot. Sound of Freedom's hackneyed white savior narrative. What difference does it make what color the guy who's stopping child trafficking is? Why does that matter? Why does it matter that Tim Ballard is white? If they had race swapped Tim Ballard and it was really Denzel Washington, would they like this movie more or less? If it was Samuel L. Jackson, would they like this movie more or less? Okay. And why does it matter? If it was Antonio Banderas, would you like this movie more or less? What difference does it make? That's what I'm thinking. Like, what difference does it make what race the guy is? Why do you care? It says, or its wildly immature assumption that abused and traumatized children go right back to normal once the bad guys are in cuffs. Well, not wanting to linger on the years and years of therapy sessions that the children will need is like that becomes pretty obvious, right? It's pretty obvious that if a child is kidnapped for 3 months from his parent, he's probably going to need therapy. But they focus mostly on the reuniting the child and the parent. That's really what they wanted, and that the child achieves some kind of normalcy afterwards, right? That the child went back to being a child after being, abused all this time. Everybody who knows in reality that if you're a sex trafficked, you're probably going to be fucked for several years, maybe for the rest of your life. But do we need to? This movie was not about that, though. This movie was about saving these children from these horrible situations and reuniting them with their parents. So the goal was to get people to the catharsis of this child is in danger, till the child is no longer in danger. Do we need to go through that this child had 6 weeks of intense therapy and started taking medications and had to sleep with the lights on and, all like, come on. What is going on here? What's going on here? Why does this matter? How is this a genuine critique of this movie? Are we supposed to pretend that New York City went right back to normal after aliens invaded and blew up half of New York in Avengers? And we didn't get to see how traumatized New Yorkers were at the end of Avengers. What? Who the hell would ask that? Nobody asks that question. Nobody talks about how, terrorized Gotham must be after the Riddler drowned a bunch of people in the Batman. We didn't get to see how they had to spend time doing therapy. Like, are you serious? Is that a serious critique of this movie? It's not. Again, this is one of those things where they just think you're stupid. They don't have any faith in your intelligence. They think you're stupid. So here's the part that really kicked me in the balls. I found this to be absolutely hilarious. And you probably will be too. There is visible suffering all around us in America. There are poor and unhoused, and people brutalized or killed by police. There are mass shootings, lack of health care, climate disasters. And yet, over and over, the far right turns to these sordid fantasies about godless monsters hurting children. Now, as in the 1980s satanic panic, they won't even face the fact that most kids who suffer sexual abuse are harmed not by a shadowy cabal of strangers, but at the hands of a family member. To know thousands of adults will absorb Sound of Fury, this vigilante fever dream, and come away thinking themselves better informed on a hidden civilizational crisis, still, it's profoundly depressing. Worse still, they'll want to spread the word. Don't watch this movie and talk about this subject. Talk about the unhoused and the poor. Talk about police brutality. Talk about mass shootings, lack of health care, and climate disasters. Don't talk about the shadowy cabal of child molesters. Talk about how sometimes the funny uncle touches the kid or the stepdad touches the kid. Talk about that instead. It's a deflection. We can talk about all of that stuff. It's not a false binary. You can't tell me to focus on climate change and I can't talk about the disaster that is the global sex cults. I can't talk about these things. I can only have one thing in my mind at all times. For starters, notice how he slipped in climate disasters as if they can actually prove that, right? We talk about mass shootings and shit all the time. We talk about lack of health care all the time. We talk about these things all the time. There's constantly movies made about it. In that Transformers movie, one of the plot lines in it is that the Puerto Rican kid can't afford health care for his little brother. Oh, okay, so we got that covered. We can just watch Transformers Beast Wars so we can get talking about the lack of health care. Come on. We want to talk about poverty. It's like, what are these people? They're telling you what they would rather you talk about rather than this movie. You're not supposed to talk about this shadowy cabal of child molesters, and that shit's not real. It's a fantasy. Unless it's not. Until we talk about Epstein, which, of course, is not a fantasy. Is this for real life, or is this just fantasy? Caught in a rapture, going straight from reality. Sure, it's not real. It's not real. Oh my God. Crazy thing. The movie is again, it's so damn simple. It literally doesn't mean anything. It it's just a movie. And people are freaking the hell out. But it does tell a story, like I said, about the woman who is involved with the sex trafficking ring in the movie. It shows how feminists and feminism are often on the side of these pedophiles. Again, if you actually look up the history of progressivism, and I'm thinking of the specific sort of intellectual system that they have that was created in France. It'll come to me eventually, but how those people want to attack like the age of consent laws and how they think that there should be no age of consent laws, etc. Like Derrida, these people have come out and they've said as much. There's a lot of feminists who see themselves as Marxists, and They attack things like the age of consent laws. They think that love has no age and all this kind of weird stuff that they keep saying. But it's made up. You're not supposed to believe that. You know, you're not supposed to believe that. You're not supposed to be paying attention to that. You're not supposed to talk about Nexium. Not supposed to talk about Epstein Island. But here's the thing about Nexium. And Nexium is a really, really interesting case because it's filled to the brim with actresses and other assorted millionaires. That's the thing about Nexium that really blew my mind, is how many uber intelligent and all of these other people that got involved in Nexium. So Vanity Fair put out an article about how many people were in. It's called The Heiresses and the Cults. This was from November 2010. It says Seagram's heiresses, Sarah and Claire Bronfman, are victims of a frightening, secretive cult called Nexium, which has swallowed as much as $150 million of their fortune. But the organization's leader, Keith Raniere, seems almost to have tapped into a complex emotional rift between the sisters and their father, billionaire philanthropist Edgar Bronfman Sr. The author investigates the accusations that are now flying: blackmail, perjury, forgery, in a many-sided legal war. Funny. These women are the daughters of apparently a guy who sells alcohol, liquor. He's a liquor billionaire, and his daughters got caught up in a scam cult, and then the cult leader started ripping the family apart. Oh my goodness. It's almost as if there's a cabal of sex traffickers and rapists and stuff that routinely operate in Hollywood among multimillionaires, billionaires, actresses, etc. So Rose McGowan, do you remember her? The girl who started, I wouldn't know. I don't think she started Me Too. I think that was a black woman. But she was one of the loudest voices once it started, because she started yelling about Harvey Weinstein. So here's this is an article from Business Insider from September 2021. Rose McGowan was hanging out with Larry Elder when Larry Elder was running for governor of California. It says McGowan, a leading figure in the Me Too movement, accused the wife of Elder's opponent, Governor Gavin Newsom, of trying to silence her about movie producer Harvey Weinstein, the Washington Post's Dave Weigel reported. In a statement provided to Insider, a spokesman for Jennifer Sable, Newsom said McGowan's claim was a, quote, complete fabrication. Quote, it's disappointing but not surprising to see political opponents launch these false attacks just days before the election. Their limited correspondence has been strictly a fellow survivors of sexual assault, and in Jennifer's former capacity, leading the Representation Project, an organization that fights limiting gender stereotypes and norms. Amazing, right? It says McGowan first made the accusation against Jennifer Sable Newsom, who married Gavin Newsom in 2008, on a Thursday while speaking on the Rubin Report, a political news talk show. McGowan said Jennifer Sable Newsom contacted her in 2017, about 6 months before the New York Times published their bombshell report detailing decades of sexual assault accusations against Weinstein. McGowan said Jennifer Sable Newsom called her on behalf of Weinstein's lawyer to ask what they could do to, quote, make her happy. Now, this is political, because this is Larry Elder, who's running for office, getting one of the Harvey Weinstein's victims to talk about Harvey Weinstein during the Gavin Newsom election thing. Yeah, this is amazing how that worked out, right? How Larry Elder became the black face of white supremacy. And he was talking about, how Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, might be involved with helping to cover up sex crimes because, these Democrats, they're all friends. And they operate in a patronage system. That's all unions and shit are, the patronage system. And patronage is the absolute antithesis of merit. Because patronage is how much I like you. Not what you can really do, but do I like you or not? Because if I like you, you get the job. No experience, doesn't matter. Or if you can scratch my back in some way, I can scratch yours right now. Because who knows what might happen? I mean, look at it. We got the vice president right now. It was one of Montel, was it not Montel? Montel Williams? What was his name? The guy who had a TV show. You know, one of his girlfriends. He used to bang Kamala Harris, so she had Hollywood connections. Funny how that worked out, right? She had sex with her boss in order to become like lead prosecutor, and when she was younger, she used to have sex with celebrities. Funny how that worked out. Funny how that worked out for old Kamala. I'm sorry, Kamala. However you pronounce her name. Is it Kamala or Kamala? But I was about to say Montel Jordan, but it's not Montel Jordan. It's like Montel Williams, I think. He used to be a talk show host. Yeah. She was banging celebrities. And she was seen on the red carpet with all these celebrities. She was a celebrity, Montel Williams. Okay, yeah. I knew his name had to be Montel. I was thinking it was Martell. Am I wrong? But it was Montel Williams. She was banging him. Then she started banging her boss. And then she got a nice job. After banging her boss, she started getting into political games. She was a patron. He helped her career after he had sex with her, of course, after he blew her back out. And he got the little knob slob. Now all of a sudden he can help her career. And now she's the vice president of the United States, and you're not allowed to mention at all that she was hobnobbing with celebrities and getting boned by them, and that she was, fucking her boss. You can't mention none of that stuff. Or if you do mention it, you have to mention it like she was a victim. She was sexually harassed by her boss, apparently. No, didn't happen. Oh, boy. Oh, brother. These people are playing in your face, man. These people playing in your face. They act like they're super smart, but so many of them only got a job because they kissed the right asses. Or because some union keep out everybody else. And look, it's not just an attack on Kamala Harris. I'm sure there's some Republican somewhere who got bent over a sink in order to get a job. I'm sure. But Kamala Harris there's video evidence of her being on the red carpet with Montel Williams. There's video. There's her boss literally told the story of them having sex, they having affairs or whatever. I mean, this stuff is facts. You can actually look it up. Are you trying to tell me that her connections to Hollywood, her having sex with celebrities, didn't help her career? Having sex with her boss didn't help her career? Come on. Come on. Come on. Oh, boy. Now, we can talk all day about the sex cults and everything, and I don't want to do that. There's another thing that I want to talk about. Tim Ballard talked about this when he was talking to Jordan Peterson. Is that the blood rituals? Now, the blood rituals I find to be very, very interesting. As everybody knows, I'm a writer. Years ago, several years ago, I noticed, because I used to read a lot of African news. That was one of the things that people have challenged me to do, is to read news outside of the United States. And I said, oh shit, I'm about to read the BBC. I grew up on Canadian media. I know how woke and garbage that shit is. So I started reading like the African news. It's the weirdest stuff you'd ever see. But what you saw was there was roving gangs of vigilantes in like Malawi, I think it was, East African country, where they were killing people and claiming those people were vampires, that they were bloodsuckers. And I thought that was very interesting. I said, wow, you don't hear about that every day, that they're literally hunting vampires in Malawi, stoning people and beating them to death. And then you see that they're also doing it in Uganda. They're doing it in Uganda too. And then you hear like they're doing it in Mozambique too. And you're like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. In 3 different African countries, there's roving gangs of individuals killing people because they say that you're a bloodsucker. In 3 different African countries and around the same time frame, there's roving gangs of individuals killing people, claiming that these people were bloodsuckers. Now, of course, the state media, whatever, would say that there's no evidence of bloodsuckers or vampires or vampirism or anything like that in these countries. In fact, Vice went so far as to say is to blame colonialism, because you got to blame the nearest white man. You got to, right? Now, Tim Ballard was talking about how he spent some time in Africa, and this was a typical African belief that that some people were bloodsuckers, just like they believe sometimes people are witches, right? And he was talking about that it's something that these people believe, and he has repeated this sort of stuff before, but it's basically in talking about how these people believe it, because he has spent time in foreign countries and they look at things a little bit differently. So these things are facts. I have read African media from Malawi, from Uganda, and from Mozambique, where there are people going around murdering folks because they think that they're drinking blood and harvesting organs and stuff like this. Now, the organ harvesting, that's an interesting one, because they believe that there is magic in the blood and in the organs of certain people. Now, it's not everybody. It's specifically albinos. All right? They think that there's something magical about albinos. So in certain African countries, albinos are hunted and killed for their organs. This is a fact. You can Google it. All right? Just Google albinos killed in Africa for their organs or something like that. All right? I'm gonna Google it myself, so I can tell you what exactly what countries. It's just from 2017. In parts of Africa, people with albinism are hunted for their body parts. It's Tanzania is one of the places. The tragic story of Tanzanian albinos hunted for body parts for witchcraft. Buried alive, Tanzania albinos paid the price for superstitions. So this is not just some QAnon conspiracy theory, okay? It's not. There's a lot of Africans who believe this stuff too. About the adrenochrome, about the organ harvesting. There's people in the United States, black people right now, that will tell you that black children are kidnapped and their organs are stolen. They'll tell you that with a straight face. Not, they will vote Democrat right down the goddamn ticket, look you right in the eye and say, if a child is missing in this city, his organs have been harvested. They'll tell you straight to your face, think nothing of it. But they're trying to put all this stuff on the QAnon conspiracy theory. It's like, come on, man. I have actually looked at news. Like, does QAnon reach all the way over to Tanzania? How did that happen? what is their effort in pushing this stuff in Africa? No, people who believe in witchcraft and Satanism and stuff like this, they tend to go to the darkest things possible. And so there's some very dark things out there. And guess what? There is some organ harvesting going on out here. All right. That's true too. Sometimes children are kidnapped and their organs are harvested. I mean, I didn't go down that rabbit hole, but sometimes it does happen. Am I saying that, it happens all the time, or that's what they kidnap children for? It's like, no, but I'm saying is it happens. These things actually occur. Do I think that there's a global cabal of elites doing it? I don't know about that. You know, do I think they're doing blood rituals? I think some of them are. We know some of them are. You think Megan Fox came up with the blood ritual all on her own? Let's talk about that for a minute. Because you got Machine Gun Kelly, who is white trash from Cleveland, Ohio. I remember when I first heard of Machine Gun Kelly. When his mixtape first came out, I think it was Lace Up. It was mid, okay? And then out of nowhere, he kind of blew up out of nowhere. And I didn't even know he was married to Megan Fox until they started talking about this blood shit. So Megan Fox talks about how she drinks several drops of Machine Gun Kelly's blood, and he drinks several drops of her blood, so that so they can be like one or something like this. Now, just a cursory glance of the Megan Fox Machine Gun Kelly relationship. There's so many different red flags that popped up. For starters, he's white trash, a white trash rapper from Cleveland, Ohio. How did he meet a movie star and marry her? Well, it was on the set of a movie. So we already got Hollywood connections. They were in Hollywood together. They hooked up. They're friends with the Kardashians. They double date with the Kardashians. And the third red flag, they got a trans son. White trash kid from Cleveland, Ohio, meets a Hollywood model. All of a sudden, he's drinking blood, and his son wears dresses. How does that happen? What's the likelihood? What's the likelihood of you being some white trash kid from Cleveland, Ohio, who could barely, keep his face clean, to you meeting a Hollywood starlet who wants to drink your blood, and then magically one of your kids is wearing dresses? Hmm. Funny that. Funny that. Well, pickle me. If you think that's normal, just fucking pickle me. All right? Go for it. Go for it. What's the likelihood that somebody who is engaging in blood-sucking rituals has a trans kid? How do you got all the red flags? How you got all of them? Some of them I understand. But it's always these Hollywood people who got the trans kid, who are involved with very weird things, and who Hollywood continuously promotes. Look at Dwayne Wade. He started, quote unquote, supporting his trans kid. Now all of a sudden he got a TV show on TNT. He's doing commercials with his wife. They're winning awards, and they're standing up talking about how we need to protect the vulnerable among us. What? Okay. Sure. Okay. Funny how that works out. But so far, Megan Fox is the only one who's actually verbally came out and supported the blood drinking. All right, so she's the only one. So you could say that, oh, it's not everybody. It's just that Megan Fox, she's a weirdo. Okay. Marvelous Mike says, I saw a meme about all the Hollywood kids that are trans. All the moms are hardcore feminists, and all the fathers are manginas or absent. That's exactly how it works out. Again, Machine Gun Kelly is not really a celebrity. Megan Fox is a celebrity, right? She was in several big budget movies. She pretty much runs that household. Now all of a sudden they're drinking blood. Their childs are in dress. Their boys are in dresses. They're best friends with the Kardashians, and they met on a movie set. So that should tell you right there, he's not the alpha in this relationship. You dig me? He's being led around. He's probably like, shit, I'm white trash. I might as well just take this. Do the best I can. I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to do what I can. All right? I don't want to lose it. WG Fields said they broke up earlier this year. They've already drunk in each other's blood. They're one now. They're one forever. Remember that? Was it a CNN reporter that ate a human brain? Wasn't it a CNN reporter? Was it a Vice reporter? Which one of them ate a human brain? Is he CNN reporter? Eats. Yeah, it was a CNN reporter that ate human brain. Amazing. Reza Aslan. He ate a human brain. Ah, crazy. But it's a conspiracy theory that these people are cannibals and they drink blood and steal organs. It's like, I don't know. Y'all let Reza Aslan eat a brain. Y'all didn't fire him. I'd have fired that motherfucker, man. You ate a human brain. You can't work here, bro. Sorry. I don't need you on my roster. You eat human brains. I can't. What can I do with you? I do remember that's the last time I saw Machine Gun Kelly in public when he got power bombed by Kevin Owens. I ain't seen that guy on TV since. This is what, 3 or 4 years ago? Nobody said that they're complete and total vampires, but you see these people constantly going on TV talking about manifesting things. You got Beyonce wearing Egyptian garb and all this kind of crazy stuff. The men are cross-dressing, wearing platforms and heels and everything. You know, it's a very interesting scenario. Very interesting scenario. So let's talk about Kevin Spacey real quick because I had this all queued up. And this was concerning to me. It says the 4 alleged victims of Kevin Spacey cannot be named for legal reasons, have each testified over the course of the last 4 weeks alongside their family and friends. The oldest complainant, chronologically, which dates back to an unspecified year in the early 2000s, alleged that Spacey repeatedly touched the alleged victim's genitalia and bottom over his clothing and put the man's hand on his own genitalia. The court heard that on the final occasion, Spacey grabbed the man who was driving so hard on the crotch that he almost caused a car crash. Spacey's defense is that it was a consensual relationship. Okay. The second alleged victim said Spacey made aggressive sexual comments to him in 2005 before grabbing him by the crotch at a charity event. The actor claimed that the account was entirely fictional. The third complainant, who met Spacey at a pub in Gloucestershire in 2013, before going back to the actor's rented house with a group of friends to continue his party, said Spacey tried to kiss him and also grabbed his crotch. Spacey called the encounter a clumsy pass that he later attempted to apologize for. The fourth and most serious complaint related to a 2008 incident in which a man came back to Spacey's apartment in London where he told the court he fell asleep or passed out and awoke to find Spacey performing oral sex on him. That's okay. Spacey claimed that the encounter was consensual and provided phone records to show that he and the other man continued contact during the evening and in the months that followed. Oh boy. Oh brother. Oh boy. The barrister who has been practicing for almost 40 years, this would be Spacey's lawyer, cautioned the jury not to be swayed by Spacey's promiscuity or sexual orientation. Quote, it is not a crime to like sex. It is not a crime to have sex, even if you're famous. It is not a crime to have casual sex. It is not a crime to have a lot of sex. It is not a crime to have sex with someone of the same sex because it's 2023, not 1823. Oh, brother. Oh, me, oh, my. The guy woke up with Kevin Spacey's mouth wrapped around his joint, but it was completely and totally consensual. It was consensual. I'm sure it was. He was asleep and he woke up to you, doing your thing, and it was consensual. You wanted it. You were dreaming about it. So he felt your aura while you were asleep. Yeah, Hollywood is totally anti-gay, y'all. Everybody knows this. It's so anti-gay. Stop it. Just stop it. They let an illiterate idiot by the name of Robert Kelly have sex with young girls for years and years and years, but there's no cabal. Like, the guy married an underage girl and didn't get arrested. He married an underage girl and didn't get arrested. How could that be? How could that be? How did that happen? Yeah, I mean, you eat a human brain. Why do you still work here, bro? Why are we still? Why would anybody take that person seriously after you ate a human brain? Come on, man. He should have been universally condemned, but he wasn't. Some people act like it didn't happen. Like, that's the weird thing. People act like it didn't happen. So Woody Allen, interesting situation is that he was tied to some really really funny individuals too. Really funny individuals. Funny how he left the country. Roman Polanski. Oh yes, absolutely. Roman Polanski was a big one. You know, no matter how many of these people you arrest, you never seem to get all of them, and then you say it's not a it's a conspiracy theory, bro. It's a conspiracy theory. You're not supposed to know about Roman Polanski or Woody Allen, or you're not supposed to know about these people. You know, they talk about them all the time, but you're not supposed to know about them. 1977, raped an underage girl. She was 13. Then wasn't there a rock star recently who had a young girl living with him? Technically, she was his ward or something like that, and and he was having sex with her. It was like some kind of rock star recently. I think it was Mick Jagger, wasn't it? Was it like Mick Jagger or something like that? Who had like control of some underage girl and was like sleeping with her, and then he claimed it was all consensual. Yeah, it was Rolling Stones. It was Mick Jagger. Lori Maddox was a groupie. She was 14 when she started following the Rolling Stones. Um, it says it's 1969 tour. They got into around blah blah blah. Mick Jagger kept writing songs about having sex with underage girls. Apparently. Oh boy. Oh brother. But there's no such thing, y'all. Y'all making it up. Y'all making it up. Here's another chick says she was actress Ray Dawn said Mick Jagger seduced her when she was 15. Oh boy, how many of them? The music industry is part of Hollywood, by the way. It's a part of Hollywood, you know. And how many of these people get busted with underage girls and underage boys and stuff like? Come on, man. But you can't talk about it. It's a conspiracy theory. You're not supposed to talk about this. It's a conspiracy theory. I'm not going into any details about any of this stuff because I didn't prepare anything about the Rolling Stones. But I just remembered it off the top of my head. Like, yo, wasn't there some rock stars that got busted recently? You know, it was it was quite a few. Wasn't these were underage girls. They were groupies, you know. I mean, it is what it is. We know how it is with groupies. But come on. Yep, Mick Jagger's Mick Jagger is fine. He's an old dinosaur. He's gonna die, and nobody's gonna remember he was having sex with underage girls. R. Kelly, though, they buried his ass, didn't they? Oh, they buried him hard. Oh, they got R. Kelly ass hard. He must have really screwed the pooch because they threw him on the barbecue. You know, and this is a fact. You know, a lot of rock stars in the '70s, a lot of movie stars and stuff in the '80s, they was banging groupies and people who hung out in bars. And you know, you had to be a certain age to be in there, but if you found your way in there, then it was just assumed. Even if you were cherry, if you had the rosiest cheeks in the world, they just assumed that you were banging these underage girls or whatever, and they would make songs about it. Oh, African Bambaataa, we don't even want to go there. You know, my goodness, it's just, and they lie to you. They look you right in the face and tell you it's not happening. It ain't happening. Now, out of all of these things that we've talked about so far, you could say, well, look, some of these things are not even connected. Like, how did Africa Bambaataa and Roman Polanski connect? Like, they don't have to be. You know, they don't have to be. Because we know that Roman Polanski was hanging out with other people, maybe not Africa Bambaataa, but maybe some other people, and they were participating in this stuff because a lot of his friends ended up getting busted doing the same damn thing. R. Kelly must have owed somebody some fucking money. That's really what it had to be. That's the thing, man. Like, if you can't make somebody no money, they ready to take you out. And I'm guessing that's what happened. That R. Kelly, they couldn't make any money on that dude anymore, so they decided they was gonna get rid of him. You know? Now, during the Seth Rollins video, I was talking about the Communist Party taking over Hollywood way back in the day, and I suggested everybody watch Razor Fist's video on the subject. It was much better than mine. I got to sneeze. It didn't come out. Okay. Anyway, so I did find a video. A movie called The Subversive Screen. A book. I'm sorry. Communist Influence in Hollywood's Golden Age, and it's no different today. The Communist Party of the United States was established in 1919, and like all national communist parties, sought to and accepted direction from the Communist International Movement, known as the Comintern, based in Moscow. While the CPUSA never commanded large numbers of members, it became a fairly significant force in American society from the mid-1930s to the late 1940s. Through expert organizing and tireless proselytizing, the party became a force in labor, among immigrant groups, and the nascent civil rights movement on certain college campuses and for a time in Hollywood. CPUSA, while a legal political entity, chose covert activity over openness, with many members operating under cover of hidden identities and with their activities closely supervised by party agents themselves. Now, how many of you guys know that there was a woman who had infiltrated civil rights movements and to find out whether the communists were in it? I'm gonna try to find what her name is, because I had the article that was actually what was her name? I'm gonna find it eventually. Again, this is the death of me doing things off the top of my head. But she did an interview, and I'm not sure if it was TV Guide. Was it TV Guide, or was it like Ebony Magazine or something like that, or was it Jet or something like that? And this lady, if you talk about her in the woke circles, they're gonna call her a bootlicker and all this kind of stuff. I got up the Ebony magazine that she was in. I'm trying to look for her name. It was the I was a spy for the FBI. It says housewife bears communist plot to infiltrate the NAACP. Now, there was a lot of people who have historically talked about different black organizations that was kind of infiltrated by the communist organizations because they didn't have any money, they didn't have a lot, so they took a lot of money in order to try to help black people. So her name was Julia Clarice Brown. This says, for 8 years and 10 months, Julia Clarice Brown, a former Cleveland, Ohio housewife, was an FBI informant in the Communist Party and Communist Front groups. The personable woman, who is now living in retirement on the West Coast, penetrated communist circles in the early 50s, rose to position of treasurer of her section, and survived at great danger to herself attempts by party toughs to weed out FBI undercover workers. During this period, Ms. Brown provided valuable information to the government on the Communist Party and its effort to infiltrate the NAACP, other civil rights organizations, and Negro churches. She slipped communist documents to the FBI and wrote regular reports on communist-inspired meetings which she attended, which she says by singer Paul Robeson and other Negroes. So when we talk about communist influence in Hollywood, you also got to talk about communist influence in the civil rights movement. W.B. Du Bois was also a communist. So when you learn this kind of stuff, man, you become uniquely aware to a lot of communist activity. And once you learn about the long march through institutions, you can't unsee some of these things. You understand? You start seeing that it starts out small. The NAACP was for black people and how they were going to advance, the colors and all this kind of stuff. And then it becomes, today about universal health care and, government takeover of every fucking industry in the United States. There's no industry in which they say the government shouldn't have anything to do with, which if we double back to The Sound of Freedom, which is one of the things that they don't like about that movie. One thing they don't like about that movie is that it critiques the government, says that the government actually is incompetent when it comes to doing certain things. But you're not allowed to talk about that because the communists don't want to talk about how the government is incompetent. They think the government is super competent. It doesn't work that way, man. These people think you're an idiot. Marvelous Mike says, I heard R. Kelly was like Ric Flair with his spending. Made $2 million, but spent $3 million. I wouldn't be surprised. He probably figured he was good for it. Like as long as he could sell records and stuff like this. Like they tried to ban his music, but Negroes kept playing it. So what they did was they ended up taking his publishing from him and, putting the victims, quote unquote, on the payroll. So now the victims get paid whenever they play R. Kelly music. I say ban it now. Steven Tyler, that's maybe who it was that was had adopted a teenager and ended up having sex with her. See, Mick Jagger was just one of the people that I knew about. Steven Tyler might be the other one. Let's check that one out. Because I know there was some rock stars that had done this. And I knew it was a really old one that just got busted recently. Underage girl. Oh yeah, Julia Holcomb. Steven Tyler is sued for sexually abusing an underage girl nearly half a century ago. He said the events allegedly occurred in the 1970s when the plaintiff, Julia Holcomb, was 16 years old and Tyler was 25. that's, you know, mm-mm-mm. I see you later, Jeremy Davis. I see he's got to go. It's quite a few people. Got to say bye bye. I'll see you guys later. It'll be here when you get back. Thank you all for stopping by. I know I didn't say that much, but I appreciate it. WGV said, let's not forget Harrison Ford rode to Poland to award Roman Polanski. Yeah, because they're friends. All these people are fucking friends. They're all buddies. You know. It says, and Hollyweird wants us to feel sorry for the strike. Me too. Yeah, yeah. That's really all it boils down to is how they keep looking at the people of Iowa and Nebraska and Idaho, places they'll never go, people that they hate. And they by the time, when they talk about things like, I saw very famous historical YouTuber by the name of Mr. Beat, and he was talking about how the Electoral College sucks. And Mr. Beat is like from like Kansas or something like that. It's like, how could you be from the middle of nowhere and think that New York and California should have more political power over your life? Why would you believe that? Why would you say that? But that's what all these people think. They think because most people live on the East Coast and the West Coast and the big cities, that those places should rule all culture. Every movie should be set in either LA or New York. If it's set anywhere else, it's not for consumption, really. It's like, come on, man. There's people in other places. That's 50 goddamn states. You can't tell me you can't set up a superhero movie in Vermont. I know it's not sexy, but come on. But they'll tell you straight up. They don't they don't rock with y'all like that. They hate you. And they tell you they hate you in subtle ways every day. They hate your God. They hate your family structure. They hate your children. I mean, for Christ's sake, I've never seen so many people who are anti-natal. They want to abort children. Okay? If they don't abort the child, they want to put the child in. When you ask them, hey, leave my child alone, I don't want to teach them sexual deviancy in schools, they'll say that you have a problem. Hey, don't teach my child any sexual deviancy in the library, you apparently have a problem. Stop teaching my child sexual deviancy through the television, through cartoons and stuff like that. They say you have a problem. It's like, what the hell? Why is it that the children are not allowed to be innocent anymore? We can't talk about sex trafficking children. We can't talk about any ways that children are victimized unless it's in a pre-approved way by people like you. You get to decide when we talk about when children are abused. And that way we're supposed to blame dads and stepdads. And then we blame priests. And that's it. Those are the only people who molest people. We can't talk about public school teachers, even though that's probably the majority right now. We can't talk about sex trafficking at the border, despite the fact that unparented minors keep popping up at the border. We can't talk about that. Or people who have minors with them, but they don't know who the fucking kid's name or anything like that. You can't talk about that. We can't talk about the pedophile rings in Afghanistan and Iraq. Google Bakabazi. Matter of fact, let's do that right now. Let's Google Bakabazi. Let's see what happens. And they'll never talk about this. Bachabazi. Bakabazi. It says the Bakabazi is a slang term in Afghanistan for a custom in Afghanistan involving child sex abuse by older men of young adolescent males or boys. Don't talk about this though. Keep it to, even though they hate soldiers, but they still won't talk about this. I mean, oh brother, again, you're not supposed to talk about this stuff. Global child sex? No, it's not happening. It's not happening. This is from the BBC. Bachabazi. Outrage after pandemic takes play to the small screen. It says in 2017, two Americans attempted something unconventional. Lyricist Charlie Sohn and composer Tim Rosser created a musical about a subject even Afghanis would consider too sensitive and unsettling. Bachabazi, or boy play. Bachabazi is a practice whereby wealthy, powerful men buy and keep adolescent boys, known as dancing boys, for sex and entertainment. The boys are trained to dance seductively at male-only parties and often sexually abused. Oh my goodness. Wealthy people in Afghanistan like to molest boys? I'm pretty sure if you look in England and France and China and Japan, you'll probably see the same goddamn thing. It's a regular occurrence, but you're not allowed to talk about it. What's going on, man? What's up? You know? Why do liberals hate the government and the patriarchy, yet side with the government when it comes to laws that they like? That's because, the Republicans are the same way. They want to shrink government, except they want to also expand government at the same time. Is everybody hates the government when it comes to certain things that they like. I mean, they dislike. For instance, the right hates the welfare state. They hate the nanny state really badly. They hate taxes. So when it comes to cutting taxes and that kind of stuff, the right will be 100% on board with cutting taxes and getting rid of certain licensing and different things like that, which are very useful at growing wealth. While leftists are very, very in support of the social safety net, but they don't like the police state. So they'll do, defund the police, and they'll do your quote unquote police reforms, which of course increases crime, but it keeps people out of prison, which is what they want. And this is where you get ideological with it, because you can talk about police brutality without being an obsessed idiot about police brutality and decide we're going to let shoplifters just run free in major metropolitan areas. You're an absolute moron if you think that was smart. You're an idiot. But that's the situation that we live in. Just like, there really is no idiocy to cutting taxes. There really isn't. I mean, your public services are not that great, but usually you have those outsourced to some kind of private entity anyway. So, I mean, that will, kind of help things, but everybody is against the government to some description, I mean, but you get typically with the left, they want the government to have more control. That the government should take over this industry and that industry, or there should be unions that are enforced by the government, which means the government should come in and force a union onto this place and then turn it around, and which is basically what the Nazis did. They turned every job into a union job and then nationalized the unions. That's what a fascist government does. A fascist government is run by labor unions, and the labor unions are run by the state. And the labor unions cannot be in any way, you can't have a choice, because if you could have a choice, people would choose not to. That's the point of a right to work state. A right to work state says that you cannot be forced to join a union and pay union dues. Why would these people be against that? Because they want you to pay union dues. Why? Why do you care whether I pay union dues or not? Because they control the unions. Because they get money from the unions. That's why they care. So that's why you will constantly see in fascist countries, they'll have a lot of unions. And then the left will talk about how that's a good thing because the unions fight for the 40-hour work week and all that bullshit, when that stuff would have happened even without the unions. But labor disputes are one kind of riot, and they love riots. If we've seen anything over the last couple of years, the left loves them a good riot. So whenever there's riots, you'll see leftists talking about how the riot turned into something good. There used to be labor riots all the time that were led by like the Teamsters or various unions. Usually the mafia was involved with this kind of stuff too, which is something you're also supposed to keep a hush hush about. That the unions were, one, racist. They were racist in the beginning. Two, once they stopped being racist, they started being run by the mob. You know, and then when they weren't run by the mob anymore, they were run by the state. So ultimately, the unions are not a good idea. They're almost always arms of the government, but also prison riots. Prison riots, they love talking about prison riots too. You'll even see the left sometimes even argue that prisoners should riot. Because you should riot for your treatment or whatever in prison. It's like you're in jail, you're a child molester or a rapist or something like that. Outside of, you getting your balls shocked every day, if you're waking up and you're still breathing, you should be okay. As long as nobody's beating your ass with a bat every day, which is, and there's some far right people who are, we should be like El Salvador, we should be like the Philippines, I think it was, where they had all those gangbangers lined up, stripped naked, hands tied behind their head or whatever, executing drug dealers. It's like, that's too far. You can go too far, but let's relax. But everybody claims that they're anti-state, but most people really aren't anti-state. Some people really are, but most people aren't. Let's see. How did we get here? How did we get here? I'm lost. Okay, it says, did you hear also about the country singer Jason Aldean, who dropped a song in a music video that everyone considered racist, but says he's a proud American? No, I did not see that. I did not see that. Let's look this up real quick. I got a couple of minutes. I'm gonna try to end this in a few more minutes. Let's see, Jason Aldean. It's the first thing that came up too. Jason Aldean stands by controversial song during Ohio's tour stop. What I am is a proud American. The country singer has been accused of promoting gun violence and racism in his new single and music video. What is this about? Jason Aldean is standing by his controversial song after being accused of promoting gun violence and racism in his music video and lyrics. His defense of the video and lyrics for his song "Try That in a Small Town" during a Friday night gig. During the show, he pointed to a cancel culture and said he wanted the U.S. to be, quote, restored to what it once was before all the bullshit started happening to us. He says, I got to tell you guys, it's been a long ass week, and I've seen a lot of stuff. I've seen a lot of stuff suggesting I'm this, suggesting I'm that. Here's the thing. Here's one thing I feel. I feel like everybody's entitled to their opinion. You can think something all you want. Doesn't mean it's true. What I am is a proud American. I'm proud to be from here. I love our country. I want to see it restored to what it once was before all this bullshit started happening to us. I love our country. I love my family, and I will do anything to protect that. I'll tell you that right now. He has a Dale Earnhardt shirt on. It says, the crowd chanted USA. He says the cancel culture will try to ruin your life if you don't do what they say. So what's the song about? Try That in a Small Town. What is the song about? It says Aldean wrote that he's been accused of releasing a pro-lynching song. What? What? He says it was subject to the comparison that a direct quote was not too pleased with the nationwide BLM. Okay, I think it's an anti-riot song, but prostitutes want to make it anti-BLM. Okay. So, okay. Okay. I see what you mean. I get it. And all the Hollywood elites started banding against him, huh? I see Sheryl Crow, some other people, saying the guy is promoting hate. They're producing. It's, they're produ- it's a pro lynching song. How many times did he use the word lynching? Let's look up the lyrics. I never heard the song before, so I'm gonna look up the lyrics. Uh, Sucker punch somebody on the sidewalk, carjack an old lady at a red light, pull a gun on the owner of a liquor store. You think it's cool? Well, act like a fool if you like. Cuss out a cop, spit in his face, stomp on the flag and light it up. Yeah, you think you're tough. Well, try that in a small town. See how far you make it down the road. Around here, we take care of our own. You cross that line, it won't take you long for you to find out. I recommend you don't try that in a small town. Got a gun that my granddaddy gave me. They say one day they're going to round up. Well, that shit might fly in the city. Good luck. Try that in a small town. See how far you make it down the road. Around here, we take care of our own. You cross that line, it won't take long for you to find out. I recommend you don't try that in a small town. Full of good old boys raised up right. If you're looking for a fight, try that in a small town. See how far you make it down the road. Try that in a small town. Okay. The word lynching is not mentioned at all here. He's talking about people who are spitting at police and pulling guns on shop owners. What did this got to do with Black Lives Matter or protesting? This is armed robbery, carjacking, and assault that he's talking about in this song. He's talking about you try assaulting an old lady in a small town. You try carjacking somebody in a small town. Again, I haven't seen the video. So the video could be pure KKK for all I know. I don't know. I haven't seen it. I'm looking at the lyrics, and I don't see anything in here that even talks about race. Because most black people don't live in a small town, I wouldn't suggest you try that in a really well-connected community. I wouldn't try that either. Unfortunately, black people don't have well-connected communities anymore. All of our family structures have been torn apart through divorce and welfare and drug dealing and drug doing. You know, he's talking about a tight-knit community where people look after each other. That's a good thing. That's what America was built on. When black people were used to fight, the whites and stuff like that, that's what it was built on. Black people had their own towns. Which takes me to the deranged DeSantis argument that I saw the other day, where it was Sonny Johnson and Delano Squires. And they were arguing on Twitter over the Ron DeSantis black people benefited from slavery because they learned invaluable skills or something like that. I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. I don't pay that close attention to it. But when I saw them arguing about black people learning skills, I said to myself, like, that's unequivocal. You can't debate that. Like you can't really debate that slaves had to learn skills. You can't. How can you debate that? Like nobody said it was a jobs program. But if you were going to be of any use to your master, he had to teach you something. You had to learn something. And yes, there were black people who learned how to do brick masonry. They learned how to do carpentry. They learned shipbuilding. They learned how to roof. They learned a lot of complex things too. It wasn't just people picking cotton. All right. That's what they have you believe, that all you did was pick strawberries and cotton all day. Some people built shit. All right. And those guys who built shit, they knew how to build shit when they became free. It was a skill set they could pass on. Now, here's the interesting thing. When you talk about this kind of stuff, there's 2 or 3 things that you need to realize. One, the reason why they taught slaves how to do stuff like shipbuilding, brick masonry, or whatever, is because it made you valuable. They will hire their slaves out like a contractor. Hey, my boy knows how to build a table. You pay him for his time. Of course, the master's going to get the money, but the slave is going to do the labor. All right? So that made you valuable. They will hire you out. Now, 2 things came out of that. One, if you had a really, really, really nice master, he would give you money. Out of the money that you made, shipbuilding or table building or building chairs or whatever, you would get a cut of that. A small cut, but you would get a cut. And this is how certain slaves were able to buy their own freedom and buy the freedom for their families. That's a fact. You can't debate that, okay? It's a fact. The second fact that comes out of this is because certain slaves knew how to do things like shipbuilding, knew how to do things like carpentry, but they were completely ignorant about the economy. What ended up happening is the white man got mad that slaves, newly freed slaves, would undercut his labor. So that's where they created trade unions. I know I'm really a hawk on the union thing, right? But once I learned that, that stuck in my fucking craw. Because you had black people who the white man would charge a quarter. The black man would do it for a dime because he didn't know any better. He didn't think to ask for a quarter. He's lucky he didn't even have a fucking job. So he's gonna go do it for a dime. The white man says, no, 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 you can't do that. You can't. You're gonna put me and all of my friends out of work. If you're willing to work for less, you're gonna put us out of work. So now he's gonna form a guild, and they're gonna kick your black ass out. And then they're gonna set what's called a mandatory minimum. They have these in pretty much every state in the country now. A mandatory minimum is that in order to work this place, you have to make a certain amount of money. What that does is that prevents people from undercutting their labor. Why would they give a fuck if the purpose wasn't to keep people out of the job? That's what unions. That's what they exist for. And before it was immigrants, it was slaves. It was newly freed slaves who were cheap labor, who didn't know any better. They didn't know how much the white man was making. They didn't care. They just wanted to make some money. And those were the people who were targeted by unions. They call it guilds. Okay? And were forced out of these industries because you could hire 2 Negroes instead of 1 white man. They don't talk about this stuff though. That's why I get so, pissed about unions and some of the government stuff. You have to know the history of this shit. And it's still going on today. It's not like one of those things where they talk about the black codes, which have been overturned. Unions still exist in the exact same way today that they existed in the past. The only difference is now that they dominate a lot of big cities, they have been co-opted to be a positive, when in reality they were created to keep certain people out of the workforce, whether it's the Chinese, the Irish, newly freed slaves, whether it's Hispanic immigrants or whatever. Keep you out of the workforce. That's the entire purpose of it. But those skills that slaves learned on the plantation, they utilized those skills when they were free. It's like if only thing you knew how to do was pick cotton, when you was free, that's what you went and did. You went back to picking cotton. And then that's how you end up getting trapped in what they call the sharecropping situation, where you would maybe take a loan and then you have to pay it back, but then you'll just be paying money back for the rest of your goddamn life. Or you have to pay the guy to use his property, and then you'll have to, cut him a huge piece of the funds or all that kind of bullshit. This stuff cannot be debated. So I didn't understand what the hell they was arguing about. So I'm saying, like, the only way you would argue that slaves learned skills would be A, you either didn't know about it, or B, you think that white man would never teach a black man anything, without considering that the white man taught the black man something for his own benefit, not necessarily for the benefit of the black man. That was just a secondary situation. He taught you something so you can make him money. That was the point. But it didn't matter because it benefited you when you were free, because that's something they can't take from you. If you know how to work with a hammer and some nails, you can, once you're free, you can do whatever you want, and you still got that skill set. It's the same. It's common sense. Once you learn how to read and write, you don't have to only. It's not like you can only read certain books. You can read whatever you want once you learn how to read and write. Once you learn how to use a hammer and a set of nails, you You can build pretty much anything given the right direction. And if somebody wants something built, they'll give you that direction. And this is what I mean by, if the United States had truly lived up to its purpose, a lot of the racial shit we have today wouldn't even exist. Because a lot of the problems that we got is because of the government trying to force integration. When the South was invaded by the North, or when they were coerced or goaded, let's say, into attacking the North first, and then they were invaded. Then the South was occupied. And then there was a lot of forced integration. That caused a lot of animosity and a lot of animus that led to like the black codes and, during Reconstruction and all this kind of stuff. Labor unions, popped up around that time because now newly freed slaves were going to compete with white men for jobs, which they could have, you could have done that in a completely different way, but they did it in the most antagonistic way possible. And ever since then, we've been doing things in a very antagonistic way. We've been trying to forcefully integrate blacks, gays, trannies, etc. into society, and instead of just letting it happen naturally or happen in some way in which people will not know or care. We keep trying to forcefully push all these groups that don't want to be together, forcing them together. It's like when you was a little kid and you were trying to force He-Man to be a G.I. Joe or something like that. Like, it don't work. All right? He-Man is meant to be He-Man. He's not a G.I. Joe. Okay? Like, you can't. He-Man was a wrestler in my household, but I'm saying, like, when those kids who were trying to make him a Power Ranger and all, like, it's not going to work. Right? Doesn't have the power set, doesn't have the move set, doesn't have the functionality. It's not going to work. And so throughout our entire society history, it has been usually leftists trying to forcefully integrate every institution, including the household, by propaganda. Which is why I keep going back to like the communist thing, is because they know it's fraying at the social fabric. But every institution in the United States could have become in some way integrated all on its own. Some of the first abolitionists in this country were Christians. Now, when slaves used to go to church, they used to have to sit in the back of the church. They were not allowed to mingle with the rest of the congregation. At the same time, though, the Christians sometimes taught the slaves how to read because they wanted them to read the Bible. If you had let people integrate on their own or splinter on their own, however they chose to do that, those relationships would be so much better today. Baseball, like, they didn't have to forcefully integrate baseball. Somebody saw that, these Negro leagues, man, they got some pretty good players. They went and got those players on their own. That would have happened with anything, People don't recognize, like, slavery and the racial line, the color line, is what they called it in one of these books I got over here. People didn't have a problem stepping over that color line if it was to their benefit. Like I was just talking about, a craftsman, a guy who needs a shit built or a roof on his house. He don't give a fuck if it's a white man or a Negro building a roof to his house. He needs a roof on his house. If he cared so much that he would only hire a white man, okay. But there's a lot of white people who would have been like, I don't care if it's a Negro. Especially if he's going to do it cheaper. I don't care. Go ahead, Negro. Patch that hole in my roof for me, please. Thank you, sir. As long as I don't got to do it, I can go back to sitting on my porch drinking my lemonade. I don't care if it's Negroes around here doing whatever. They can do whatever they want. They can talk about how Negroes are inferior all day long. If they needed a Negro to do something, they'd hire them to do it. Whether it's sports, whether it's crafts, politics is going to be a little bit different because, you're talking about masses of people, so that's going to be different. But most other things. I mean, Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, both guys were born slaves. White people love both of these guys. Booker T. Washington went and built schools that white people funded. All right. He would go to white people and say, hey, help me build these schools. And the white people would say, okay, fine. If for nothing, to keep your black ass children away from my white kids, here's some money. And guess what? He didn't care. The purpose was to educate Negro children. He didn't care if the Negro children didn't go to the same school as the white man. It wasn't about forceful integration. It was about educating Negro children. That was his goal. That's what he wanted to do. It wasn't a forceful Negro kids have to go to the same school as white kids. He didn't care about that. The moment we started caring about that kind of shit is the reason why the shit's so fucked up today. The reason why we have to keep arguing about affirmative action. Instead of just letting people find friends, friend groups, etc. If you really believe that diversity is our strength, which is what they swear up and down, then you would have let it happen naturally. You wouldn't try to force it. You would let the people who want the advantage get the advantage. If that was the truth. But it's not the truth. In truth, it's a patronage system. They want to be able to pick the black people who make it. They want to be able to put their favorite black people on top, their favorite gay people, their favorite trannies, their favorite Hispanics. They want to be able to handpick these groups of people. They would rather have AOC than Pitbull, I can tell you that. They would rather have Don Lemon than Clarence Thomas. So in a patronage system, who's going to get the job, Don Lemon or Clarence Thomas? Don Lemon. Who's going to be seen as smarter, Don Lemon or Clarence Thomas? Don Lemon. When you are in a patronage system, it doesn't matter what your talent level is. It only matters that you say the right shit and you kiss the right asses. Hollywood is all about ass kissing. That's why they don't like people who are independent, people who serve, God, who love their country, who care more about their family than the politicians or the state. They don't understand that because you have allegiances that are not to them. And they can't have that. They don't want you to have any allegiances outside of them. They're the jealous gods. You think your God is jealous? Try working with some fucking leftists. You have to believe everything that they say. But that's what I mean by Hollywood hates you. If you don't believe 100% in anything that they believe, they have no use for you. They're not at the point where they can kill you yet. I don't think they'll ever get that far in the United States, not without, them getting shot first. But it's unfortunate. All right, so my tablet's about to die. So thank everybody for coming in. I appreciate it. If you're just coming in as I'm ending, start from the beginning. But thanks, everybody. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.